Up until this point, we've spent a lot of our conversation talking about the person that wants to put on healthy muscle, build up lean muscle mass. I want to flip things here before we part ways and talk about the individual who has extra weight, and this weight isn't good weight, it's fat, and they want to burn that fat and also use weightlifting as part of that protocol to help burn the fat, but then other modalities you'd include as well to help that person get to a healthy weight, but coming the other way.
Yeah, I think we covered a lot of those things as far as our toolbox of satiety is the top of that list. If somebody wants to lose weight, they have to maintain a calorie deficit. And now you want to pull out all the stops in order to try and do that. You want to have a plan. Uh, Meal prepping is probably the most successful intervention that you can utilize to help you comply with the diet. Uh, whether you order meal prep from my meal prep company and I ship it right to your door, or you cook it yourself. I don't care, but meal prepping is a successful behavior. Obviously, tracking is huge. That's what gets measured, gets improved. Weigh daily. Write down your hours of sleep. Keep track of your step counts. You make sure that you're continuing to get at least 8,000 plus steps a day. As people start losing weight, they tend to move less. I talked about non-exercise activity, and so you want to track your steps to make sure that doesn't happen. Um, those are big things, and of course, the high satiety foods, higher protein meals, and more fiber, and more boiled potatoes and oranges, more unprocessed whole foods that you make at home, and less processed foods. Those should be a much smaller portion of your diet because it's easy to overconsume. I like to get the snacks out of the house. It's not to say you can't go have a snack, but you create a barrier to entry if you got to get in your car and drive and get it. Whereas in the house, you might keep things like I like biltong, which is a jerky that's really low in fat and sugar. It's just something that you can just sit there and chew on and kind of satisfy that. A lot of times it's not hunger, but it's boredom, stress, social situations, trauma. There's a whole lot of other reasons why people eat. And so if I have things around to snack on, biltong, the jerky I mentioned, or fat-free Greek yogurt with blueberries and strawberries, those kinds of things are great go-tos to have readily available as snacks for you. Uh, that's the big stuff. And I mentioned, of course, the 10-minute walks are huge, and you want to do some sort of weight training, but don't more exercise does not equal more weight loss. You don't start yourself on this program that's not sustainable and doesn't fit your lifestyle, that you're just going to not do, and then criticize yourself for the fact that you just kind of bit off more than you could chew. We're busy people. You got jobs, you got kids, a whole lot of obligations. These 10-minute walks, they can fit anywhere. I walk my kids to school in the morning and I pick them up in the afternoon. When I travel, I walk around the hotel. When I'm waiting for the bags at baggage claim, I'm walking around baggage claim. I'm just using every opportunity I can. When I walk from the plane to baggage claim, it's a deliberate. I'm pumping my arms. I see people getting off the tram that started where I started, and I got a 10-minute walk in. So I use all those opportunities at night, certainly after dinner. And if the weather doesn't permit, or if your neighborhood has drive-by shootings, then get a recumbent bike and sit in in your family room there in front of the TV and ride that bike. It's just 10 minutes. It's about probably less time it would take to make a phone call or watch your favorite YouTube video, or our podcast for that matter. And we can exercise during that time. So those are the kind of the big recommendations. And I got to say this, uh, there are people who have a very hard time losing weight. As mentioned earlier, hunger is an overwhelming stimulus. And that is what the major cause of lack of weight loss compliance is. You just get hungry and tired, hence not wanting people to overtrain. Uh, there is a medication that is utilized, that is FDA approved and utilized quite successfully on long-term trials with very minimal side effects, called semaglutide. And basically, it suppresses your appetite. That's all it does. And I've had clients who have had roller coaster rides with weight loss and regain, who have started this medication, and the control group on a 2-year study might lose 2 or 3% of their body weight and be able to maintain that. These people lose 16 to 18% of their body weight and are able to maintain it with very little adverse effects, other than maybe some people have some digestive distress, a little bit of nausea from The dose dependent is really what that is caused by. So I have to mention, if you're struggling with weight loss, that is a reasonable avenue. Merrick Health provides the product as well, and you can get it from your doctor, but it is extremely effective medication for controlling hunger, where you might just only eat once a day, and that may be what you need, at least to get. I say concurrently learn the long term behaviors that will allow you to maintain that weight loss, so you don't have to be on the medication all the time. But if you have some significant health problems as a result of your excess weight, which is common, this would be a great way to kind of get that first 7 to 10% of your body weight off and experience all the health benefits that go with that.
Let's stick to the natural side of things here, though, and talk about, we mentioned protein being very satiating. What are some, I want to make sure we highlight this, what are some of the specific foods people can include that are, besides protein, which could be, plant-based or meat, but what are some of the specific foods people might want to include? I think oranges is one of them, you mentioned it, but what are some of the others?
Yeah, there's a satiety index. The ones I always remember are the ones that are way over out here on the chart in terms of satiety. It was boiled potatoes and oranges. Those were on the top of the list. And then everything that contained protein, whether it was fish or steak or turkey or eggs or yogurt, everything that contained protein, and then everything that contained a lot of fiber. All three of those, fruits and vegetables, both. I like the low sugar fruits. Again, the blueberries, strawberries, raspberries, and oranges, just because they're higher in fiber and water, lower in total calories. And so they keep you satiated with fewer calories. And you could most certainly eat legumes and that kind of for your protein if you were vegetarian or vegan. They do, in order to get a satisfactory amount of protein, they're going to come with more calories. But as long as you were cautious, to watch the total caloric load, and then you could supplement some of the additional protein using a powder, a soy-based or a pea-based powder as well. So those are the big rocks. Just any kind of protein that you prefer as a lean protein. I'm again cautious to say you got to watch that saturated fat. Butter, bacon, ice cream, coconut oil, even ribeyes. Unfortunately, they're so high in saturated fat as a percentage of total calories. It's going to be hard to keep your total fats and your saturated fats, in particular, below the threshold that American Heart Association suggests is, and all the research suggests, it's not just the AHA, can drive up LDL, which is an independent risk factor for cardiovascular disease. I used to not believe this. I went down the rabbit hole, as did Lane Norton just 4 years ago, said that saturated fat was healthy, as did examine.com last year. They have 14 PhDs on their staff, and they posted literature suggesting that saturated fat was fine. But there's enough converging lines of evidence now, especially with the Mendelian randomization trials showing people who have genetic predispositions having very different outcomes in terms of their response to LDL as a result of their saturated fat consumption and their subjectivity to all-cause mortality, particularly cardiovascular disease. So there's enough research there. And again, I was in the camp that thought that if you were healthy and you were relatively lean and active, that it didn't matter. But in fact, if you do a blood test, particularly if you have some sort of genetic predisposition for hypercholesterolemia, you need to keep your LDLs under 100. And more specifically, your ApoB should be monitored because that's probably the most accurate predictor of your cardiovascular disease risk over time.
If you enjoyed that clip, press here for the full episode. I'll see you over there.
Oranges are very high on the satiety index, as are potatoes. To be honest, boiled potatoes I have in all of my weight loss clients' diets because they're really high on the satiety index. Carbohydrates don't need to be demonized. The reason I like them, if we're having this discussion about athletes, is because